They always said humans were too wild to be left unchecked, too unpredictable, too emotional. That was their excuse, anyway. That was how they justified shackling Earth in chains, economically, genetically, and culturally, until the word free didn't mean a damn thing anymore. They didn't invade with guns. No, they were smarter than that. The Varelians came first, pretending to offer peace and trade. Earth gave them trust, gave them our leaders, gave them our industries. In return, they gave us collars. The Irothi wrote the laws that made our births regulated. The Tyrak kept our soldiers sedated with implants. The Vryn controlled our airwaves, our minds, our education. They all took a piece of Earth and left us with the illusion of autonomy while the planet bled from the inside out. And the worst part? We let it happen. My name's Abram Rorden, not a hero, not a politician, just a man who was born into a system that saw him as nothing more than a well-trained ape. My father died breaking his back mining zirconite in the Sarn Belt for less than a credit a day. My mother was sterilized at 19 because her DNA didn't meet the Federation Harmony Index. I was classified as functional labor by age 7, fitted with a neural shackle before I even knew what freedom felt like. We weren't citizens. We weren't even prisoners. We were property. The turning point came the day I watched a boy get executed for humming an old Earth song, something about rebellion. I think it was from the old world before we were sold off piece by piece. The guard, a bloated three-eyed Rovanian, smeared the boy's brains across the concrete like he was swatting a fly. The rest of us stood still, silent, programmed by fear. That night I cut the shackle out of my skull with a piece of broken pipe. Nearly died from the bleeding. But when I woke up, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, my own thoughts, my own voice. They taught us we were weak, but they forgot what happens when weak men have nothing left to lose. I disappeared into the underlayers of the trade colonies, hid among smugglers and rebels, the ones too broken or drunk to care. I learned fast. Learned that the Federation didn't fear humans. They feared free humans. Ones who could think, plan, strike. And that's exactly what I became. Over 20 years I built something in the dark. Not just a rebellion, a reckoning. We trained in abandoned moons, hijacked warships, rewired the neural jammers. We turned former slaves into assassins, miners into soldiers, and children into spies. Earth may have been chained, but its sons weren't dead yet. Then came the day the Federation leaders gathered for the Galactic Unification Accord, a conference meant to finalize the permanent classification of humanity as a servitor species. A fancy way of saying, you are ours forever. That was the day we struck. We weren't just fighting for freedom anymore. That word meant nothing in a galaxy where justice had been bartered away like meat. No, we were here for judgment. Every species that signed the accord, everyone that profited from our pain, everyone that watched and stayed silent while Earth was stripped of its dignity, they were all guilty, and they would all pay. I sent a transmission on every frequency they couldn't block. You backed our enslavement. You stripped us of our language, our names, our futures. Now the debt comes due. This is not a war. It's not a rebellion. This is humanity's final judgment. And I am the executioner. What followed wasn't diplomacy. It wasn't politics. It was vengeance, ugly, violent, and precise. And it was just the beginning. When I finished that broadcast, when the last word echoed through the back channels of every planet, station, and dirty back-alley dome, they thought I was bluffing. I saw it in their faces, those smug, reptilian dignitaries in their polished armor and silk-tongued translators. I watched the footage back later, frame by frame. Some laughed. Others whispered to aides with the smug comfort of species who had never been truly hunted. But the humans that were still in chains? They didn't laugh. They remembered. That message wasn't for the ruling species. It was for us, the scattered remnants of Earth, the forgotten laborers, the nameless husks being worked to death under triple suns and synthetic gravity. The humans who had been bred to obey, sterilized to prevent resistance, and psychologically neutered with drugs and devices. They watched that broadcast, and something old woke up in them. Something primal. Something ours. We hit the first station 2 hours later. Taraxis Prime, the administrative capital of the Vrin Media Network. It wasn't random. They were the ones who had erased our history first. The Vrin ran 1 billion holoscreens across the galaxy, each one churning propaganda that painted humans as docile, grateful, eager to serve. Their slogan still haunts me. Unity through hierarchy. Unity. That's what they called it when they took a child from his mother and fitted her with a collar that locked when she screamed too loud. We breached the station's airlocks using a hijacked supply freighter. It had been camouflaged perfectly, welded shut from the inside, filled with scavenged Vrin tech to fool sensors. But inside, 48 human fighters waited, half of them former miners, the other half ex-slaves from the Vorex pit colonies. None of them were professional soldiers. That's why it worked. No one expects the desperate to be organized. The airlock opened, and we poured in like fire. The first Vrin officer who stepped into the corridor didn't even reach for his weapon. He was too busy adjusting his translator unit, trying to understand why his station had gone dark. One of our men, Bren, silent as a ghost, face burned half off from acid years ago, stabbed him in the throat before he could even gasp. The rest came fast. We didn't take prisoners. That wasn't part of this war. Anyone who stood against us, anyone who worked for the system that kept our people chained, was the enemy. No debates, no mercy. This wasn't a revolution with rules. It was an execution. Within 20 minutes, the station's upper command was in flames. By 40, we had control of the internal broadcast system. That's when I spoke again. This time, no mask, no distortion, just me, my face, my voice, my fire. Taraxis Prime has fallen. The Vrin architects of Earth's memory purge are dead. The station will remain dark as a reminder. The age of silence is over. You erased our past. We'll carve our names into your bones. We left the station in pieces, and we made sure the rest of the galaxy saw it burn. I wanted the message to be clear. This isn't diplomacy. This is damnation. After that, the dominoes started to fall. More humans began defecting from labor camps. The neural shackles we thought were unbreakable. Turns out, we weren't the only ones who'd figured out how to fry the circuits. Entire outposts went silent. Human workers stopped responding. Then they started attacking. And yet the Federation still underestimated us. They thought it was a phase, a few rogue elements acting out. They told each other that humans were too fractured, too damaged to be a real threat. They didn't understand something fundamental about us. We weren't trying to survive anymore. We were trying to settle the score. And we had centuries of blood to answer for. I remember the moment everything truly shifted. We had just returned to the Foundry, our hidden base orbiting the corpse of a dead dwarf planet, tucked inside an asteroid belt no sane pilot would ever chart. That place had been home for years, home to our wounded, our tech salvage teams, our underground engineers who were building weapons no one thought humans capable of understanding. One of our scouts, a kid named Riggs, not more than 17, stumbled into the war room, eyes wild. He held a data chip in his hand, shaking. "Sir," he gasped, "we cracked the Syndicate archive on Kelion V. We found it." I took the chip and slid it into the console. What came up nearly broke me. Video logs, thousands of them, smuggled archives, old footage, classified communications, evidence, all from the first years of Earth's occupation, when the Federation still called it a protective economic transition zone. I watched as human leaders signed contracts under duress, saw the first medical experiments, splicing DNA, sterilizations, reprogramming minds. And then I saw Project Compliance. They had bred humans to serve, not in theory, literally. They engineered generations of docility, splicing fear and obedience into our genomes. They erased aggression, suppressed critical thinking. The humans being born today, they weren't just enslaved by culture. They were genetically neutered into submission. And the Federation? They saw it as a success. I stood there, fists clenched so tight they bled. I looked around the room, at the others who were watching it all unfold, men who had lost families, women who had been sterilized, lobotomized, thrown into pleasure camps. Nobody spoke. The silence was heavy, like a noose tightening. We weren't just fighting back anymore. We were taking back what was stolen from our blood. That night, I made a vow. Not a speech, not a statement, just a simple truth. Every species that signed off on this, every species that stood by and watched it happen, will face extinction. That wasn't war talk. That was sentence. The next target was bolder, riskier, more personal. Thorian 9, the birthplace of the Human Reprogramming Initiative. That's where they raised the breeders, the optimized humans, bred and educated to smile while they cleaned alien waste and thanked their owners for it. We didn't go in quietly. We blacked out the orbital grid, jammed their sensors, and dropped in like a meteor strike. Our ships weren't elegant. They were barely airworthy. Salvaged husks with too much firepower and not enough shielding. But we made it to the surface. And what we found there, it wasn't just horror, it was humiliation. Rows of human children sitting cross-legged in sterile rooms, being force-fed alien history through neuroharmony helmets. Humans have always served. It is our purpose, the voice said over and over. We didn't just burn that facility, we razed the entire compound. We executed every overseer. We left the walls smeared with a message. This is not rehabilitation. This is rape. No apologies, no treaties. We were past forgiveness. The rebellion began to spread like a virus. Colonies fell. Trade routes were sabotaged. The Federation's slave supply chain began to choke. Some tried to fight us directly. Species like the Arvanox, who built war fleets and ran merc camps of enhanced killers. They didn't expect us to use their own weapons against them. We hacked their drones, infected their cyber systems, fed viruses through their own encrypted channels. When their capital ship tried to fire on one of our refugee stations, it exploded mid-transmission. Every time they thought they were ahead, we showed them we were already inside their walls. And I made sure they saw me every time. No more hidden messages, no more disguises, my face, my voice, my name. Because I wanted every single one of them to remember who they enslaved. I wasn't a rebel. I wasn't a freedom fighter. I was a product of what they built, of their arrogance, their cruelty, their greed. I was the result of centuries of suppression finally snapping back like a bone through skin. And I was far from done. They started calling me the Broken Flame across Federation media networks, trying to paint me as a deranged relic of a failed species. Said I was a terrorist, a fanatic, a human drunk on vengeance who didn't understand peace. I understood peace just fine. Peace was the way my father died in a collapsed mine shaft because the Raxian contractors refused to waste a drone on human safety checks. Peace was the way my mother begged for sterilization instead of the other population control procedures offered in Sector 9. Peace was watching your people dig graves for their own history with a smile because the drugs in their systems rewired them to think chains were gold. The Federation loved peace, as long as it meant submission. So no, I wasn't deranged. I was clear, for the first time in my life. And clarity had a body count. After Thorian 9 burned, we expected the retaliation. What we didn't expect was hesitation. Entire sectors went dark, not from us, but from the Federation itself. The Syndicate species started pointing fingers. The Varelians blamed the Raxians for failing to maintain control over the mining colonies. The Raxians accused the Vryn of manufacturing sympathy for humans through cognitive contamination leaks. They feared us now. That fear? It was leverage. It meant chaos. And chaos meant opportunity. We split the fleet. Half went south along the Dysian trade corridor to cripple supply chains, drop sabotage cells, and gather refugees. I took the other half into the Carthix Belt, the last free black market stronghold. The place where every dirty deal, slave trade, and illegal cyber weapon had passed through in some form since before Earth even knew aliens existed. It was time to settle accounts with the underworld. They said no one could control Carthix, not even the Federation. It was ruled by syndicate warlords, smugglers, bounty queens, and exiled generals who'd sold their loyalty for credits. They weren't idealists. They didn't care about politics. But they had blood on their hands, human blood. Because while the Federation made laws, Carthix broke them, and sold the pieces. I didn't need all of them to surrender. Just one. Jadrek the Fangless, the broker who ran the spine market. He'd trafficked thousands of human children into genetic auctions. The kind where species paid in platinum bars for untouched specimens with maximum neural compliance. I'd seen the files. I'd seen the footage. His face haunted my nightmares since I was 16. He was a legend on the wrong side of every line. So I made him a deal. I walked into the spine market without a gun. Just me. One man. Covered in the soot and ash of the war he helped fund. They took me straight to Jadrek, like they couldn't wait for the punchline. He was everything I remembered. Pale reptilian hide, rows of sharpened teeth filed into brutal stumps, eyes always twitching like he was watching for betrayal. He lounged on a throne of bones, human, Vryn, even a few other fangless. He thought it made him look powerful. All I saw was weakness hidden behind trophies. "You must be the Abram Rorden," he hissed, pouring himself something thick and green. I expected taller. I didn't sit. "I expected a corpse," I said. "But here you are. Still breathing." He chuckled. "I suppose you came to kill me then?" "No," I said. "I came to offer you a future." That caught his attention. I told him the truth. Carthix would fall. It was a matter of time. The Federation would come for it when the rebellion was too strong to contain. And when they did, they wouldn't ask questions. They'd level the belt with orbital strikes. No more deals, no more smuggling, just scorched rock. "But you," I said, leaning close, "you could be something else, a king. If you help us now, if you feed us information, fuel, gear, we'll let you walk. Let you build a new empire with our protection. No more middleman. No more chains. Just fear. Your fear in them." Jadrek didn't blink for a long time. Then he leaned back, sharp teeth glinting. "I never liked the Federation," he said. "Too clean, too fake, always smiling while they ripped your organs out." "Then let's stop pretending," I replied. We shook hands. And just like that, the black markets turned. Fuel lines reopened. Weapon caches flooded our ships. Our fighters were fitted with upgraded armor, cyber rigs that let them override security grids in seconds, EMP knives that could shred neural shackles with a single jab. Carthix had become a silent ally. But we paid a price for that alliance, one I didn't see coming. His name was Cairn, one of our own, a squad leader from the early years. I'd trusted him with operations across 3 sectors. He was sharp, brutal, loyal, I thought. But Carthix tempted him. He started making side deals, selling black market access codes to independent cells, arming factions that weren't under our command. He wanted power, not liberation. And when I confronted him in the bowels of the foundry, he didn't even lie. "You think this war ends with you, Abram?" he snarled. "You think you're justice? You're just another tyrant wearing a broken chain around your neck like it makes you righteous? But me? I'm building a real future, not one where humans grovel or where they die trying to prove they're monsters. One where we own everything." I didn't argue. I put a bullet in his head. No trial, no exile, just judgment. His body was ejected into the void with the others who crossed the line. I broadcast the footage to the whole fleet. Not to scare them, not to threaten them, but to remind them. Loyalty was blood, and blood bought vengeance. We didn't have the luxury of infighting. Not anymore. The Federation had begun retaliating, not with armies, but with purges. They sent sterilization ships to colonies suspected of harboring rebel sympathies. Entire human populations, flushed out of oxygen, bathed in radiation, or simply disappeared. They weren't fighting to win, they were fighting to erase. So we pushed harder, faster, darker. The next strike was the most important one yet. Federation Command Hub Epsilon 3, orbiting Kador Prime. That's where they processed all the genetic classification data, where they tagged every human birth with a future. Labor, servitor, breeding stock, or expendable. That station was the nerve center of human control. We had to erase it. It wasn't just a military target, it was symbolic. The brain that kept the system breathing. The plan was simple. Hack the station's outer defenses using the stolen Vrin encryption from Carthix. Hijack a transport vessel coded for genetic sample deliveries. Smuggle in a fire team. Blow the central core. Extract. But things went wrong. We got the encryption wrong. Mid-docking, their systems flagged the codes. The station didn't lock down. It opened fire. Our decoy ship was vaporized. Half the team never made it out of the docking bay. We were exposed. I had a choice. Call off the mission or go in anyway. I went in. I took 9 soldiers with me. Fighters I trusted with my life. Some had been with me since the dirt farms of Sector 11. Others were recent defectors, faces still green with fear and fire. We carved our way through the station level by level. Every corridor a death trap, every corner another ambush. But we pushed. Bled killed. When we reached the core chamber, I saw it. A glass dome filled with data spires, pulsing, humming, storing the lives of every human in the galaxy, like files in a filing cabinet. Their futures weren't just predicted, they were programmed. All we had to do was set the charges and go. But one of the rookies, Ren, stopped. He was shaking. "They used to have my sister in here," he whispered. "I can see her ID on the wall." "Set the charge," I said. "But what if she's still—" "Set the charge!" He hesitated. I said it myself. We ran. The explosion ripped the spine of the station in half. The data collapsed in flames. The dome shattered. The Federation lost 3 decades of genetic control in one breath. Every future they tried to script for us? Gone. But Ren didn't make it. He hesitated again, saw someone he thought he recognized in a lab coat. He turned back. Trusted the wrong memory. He died screaming. I listened the whole time. When we got back to the foundry, I didn't speak for 2 days. Not because of grief, because I couldn't stop thinking about the cost. We were winning. We were actually winning. But it was costing us more than bodies. It was costing us our souls. And I knew, deep down, that the worst was yet to come. Because vengeance has momentum. And once it's rolling downhill, nothing can stop it. Not even the truth. The further we pushed into the void, the more the lines blurred. It wasn't about freedom anymore. Not really. Not when you're torching entire research stations, gutting crews in their sleep, turning hab domes into mausoleums with rigged airlocks. That wasn't freedom. That was vengeance dressed like justice. And the people following me? They didn't ask questions anymore. That scared me more than anything. We were changing, all of us. The longer we fought, the less human we felt. And the more we liked it. It was like the war stripped off the skin of what we used to be and revealed something old underneath. Something wild, predatory. Something they'd tried to burn out of us centuries ago. They failed. And now they were starting to realize it. The shift came not long after Epsilon 3 fell. A week after the blast, one of our relay ships intercepted a scrambled signal from the edge of the Delta Fringe. It was Federation military grade, encrypted to hell, bouncing off black holes, rerouted through abandoned deep space probes. It wasn't meant for anyone to hear, but we cracked it anyway. I was in the ops bay when the message came through. 2 minutes of audio. Fuzzy, distorted, but unmistakable. Subject still contained, breach level red, request termination protocol fallback, human strain. Theta 9 has demonstrated advanced cognitive spread, containment no longer viable, request permission to initiate Oblivion directive. I sat frozen. Human strain. Theta 9? The others gathered around. My comms tech, Drev, looked up from the console with pale eyes. That's not us, he said. That's something else. I played the message again. This wasn't about the rebellion. This wasn't about the war. This was something older, something buried. We cross-referenced every known classified operation tied to human genetics. The data we pulled from Carthix, the Federation's black site leaks, the syndicate memos, all of it. And there it was, buried in a ghost file deep inside an abandoned Raxian archive. Theta 9, a failed human weapon program, discontinued after initial trials. Too unstable, they said. Too dangerous. Too unpredictable. But not because it didn't work, because it worked too well. Theta 9 wasn't just about enhancing strength or speed. It wasn't a serum or a cybernetics program. It was biological reversion, an attempt to undo centuries of selective breeding and programming. They tried to force humans back to their primal evolutionary baseline, violent, creative, disobedient, resilient beyond logic, the very traits that made us a threat in the first place. It succeeded. Too well. They created humans who couldn't be controlled, men and women who didn't just resist commands. They infected others with the same resistance. Thought viruses, shared rebellion through contact, even exposure. A single Theta 9 subject could flip an entire labor colony in less than a week. So the Federation buried them, deep underground, sealed in cryovaults, erased from official logs. And now? Now something had woken them up. We tracked the origin of the signal to a dead zone on Varnock 13, a planet listed as inhospitable due to magnetic instability. That was a lie. The surface was rough, sure, storms that could peel metal like skin, but survivable. We sent a stealth crew down, 6 of my best. 2 ex-engineers, 3 heavy gunners, and Marek, my infiltration lead. What they found wasn't a facility. It was a tomb. Buried half a mile under jagged stone, encased in magnetic shielding, the structure pulsed with faint energy. Marek's team broke in through a ruptured maintenance shaft. No guards, no drones, nothing. Just corridors thick with dust and silence. And then they found the vault. 17 cryopods. All human, all marked TH9. The logs were scrambled, but one line stuck out in the decrypted mess. Subject TH9-01, Abram prototype unstable. Memory divergence initiated. Subject deemed unfit for continuation. Clone destroyed. proceeding with TH9-02. I stared at that line for hours. Prototype. My name. Was it coincidence? Some twisted mistake? Or was I part of something I never knew existed? Drev looked at me carefully. You ever get tested as a kid? For genetics? Brain scans? I remembered flashes, machines, wires, my mother screaming at a doctor, a needle in my spine. And then nothing. I never thought to question it. I was a labor-class orphan. We all went through screenings. We all got tagged, sorted, drugged, assigned. But what if I wasn't just a survivor? What if I was a designed failure? I didn't tell the others. Not yet. We brought one of the pods back to the foundry. TH9-07. Female. Mid-20s. Still in cryo. Comatose. We debated waking her up, argued for hours. But in the end, I made the call. We triggered the thaw cycle. It took 6 hours. During that time, everyone was on edge. You could feel it in the air, the tension, the unspoken fear. What if she was dangerous? What if she was just another weapon? But when her eyes opened, she didn't attack. She wept. Her name was Nera. She didn't remember much, just fragments, cold, needles, screams, dreams of fire and chains, but the moment she looked at me, her expression changed, like she recognized something. Not my face, my rage. You burn, she whispered, like the others. We asked her what Theta 9 was, what it did to her, to them. She said one word. Awakened. That night she convulsed in her bunk. We thought it was withdrawal, but what came out of her wasn't blood. It was data. Her neural pathways were encoded with stolen files, memories, logs, maps. She didn't just remember her past. She carried knowledge they thought lost. Her brain was a vault. Inside that vault, blueprints for something the Federation never wanted us to find. A ship. Not just any ship. A human-designed war cruiser from before the Reformation, before Earth fell. Codenamed Judicator. Built in secret, never launched. Designed to carry a planet-cracker weapon fueled by compressed quantum matter. The last act of defiance before the human government surrendered. The Federation seized it before it launched, and buried it. On Drekis 2, a toxic ice world outside the regulated maps. That was our next move. Not another base, not a sabotage run. This was an ascension, because once we had that ship, we wouldn't be fighting from the shadows anymore. We'd be bringing the war to their skies. I made one final transmission before we departed the foundry. To every human still living under shackles. To every man who bowed his head because it was easier than dying. To every child who thought they were born just to serve. They made us weak. They engineered our silence, but somewhere in that silence they forgot something. You can program obedience, you can sterilize will, but you can't kill fire, and now that fire is awake, you are not alone, you are not broken, you are the storm. And we are coming. As our fleet jumped into the black toward Drekis 2, I looked out the viewport and felt something I hadn't in years. Not hope, not peace, clarity. The galaxy was about to remember what it did to Earth. And when we arrived with Judicator behind us, they wouldn't be laughing anymore. They'd be begging. Drekis 2 was colder than death. Not the kind of cold you feel in your skin, but the kind that gets behind your eyes, down to the bone, and stays there. A dying planet at the edge of known space, carved out by tectonic scars and orbital decay, its skies glowed with flickering auroras from the decaying solar fragments above. But beneath that icy ruin, it waited. Judicator. Earth's final scream before silence. It had been buried deep in a canyon choked by methane blizzards and magnetic storms, masked by artificial shielding, disguised as tectonic interference. No Federation maps mentioned it. No civilian logs recorded it. Only the data encoded in Nera's broken mind had led us here. And if we failed, This wasn't just another missed target. This was the end of momentum. The fire we started across a dozen stars would smolder without oxygen. This ship was the match. We landed in silence. 3 ships touched down. A combat skiff, a cargo rig, and 1 evac flyer. 24 soldiers in total. Not because I didn't trust our numbers, but because anything more would be suicide. Drekis 2 wasn't just hostile, it was defended. Not by Federation troops, by the past. Ancient drones circled the outer ice canyons, automated systems that had long outlived their purpose, still running kill protocols for enemies that no longer existed. Their programming hadn't degraded. If anything, it had grown paranoid. They targeted movement, heat signatures, even neural stress patterns. We had to move like shadows. Nyera led us through the sub-layer. The cold didn't touch her like it did the others. She seemed wired for this terrain, drawn to something beneath the silence. And I trusted her more than anyone at that point. Maybe because she carried the same fury I did. Maybe because I saw a part of myself in her. A piece I thought lost. At 0400 station time, we breached the vault. It was a jagged fissure in the canyon wall, sealed by a barrier of layered carbonite and rusted defense turrets. Marek's slicers disabled the outer shell in 6 minutes, bypassing retinal sensors and activating the original Earth command code hidden beneath the encryption. The vault opened itself. The air inside wasn't cold. It was sterile. Preserved, like something waiting to breathe again. We stepped into a graveyard of human brilliance. The chamber stretched for half a kilometer, with scaffolding running up walls etched with old Earth emblems, the kind banned by Federation law. The judicator sat suspended above the floor by electromagnetic anchors. Its hull was obsidian black, covered in angled armor like the folded wings of a predator. It wasn't sleek like Federation cruisers. It didn't look diplomatic or elegant. It looked like a warning. Even after a century buried, the ship had power. Dim lights glowed from the undercarriage, and faint pulses echoed through the air like a heartbeat slowed by time. It had never been flown, never even activated, but it knew what it was. "Do you feel that?" Nara whispered beside me. I nodded. "It's awake," I said. We spent 12 hours bringing it online. The bridge was sealed under a triple-lock genetic key. That should have been the end of us. Except when I approached the console, the lock cracked open with a soft hiss. Like it recognized me. Same gene line, same imprint. The moment I placed my hand on the control pad, the lights surged. Screens flickered to life. Old Earth command interfaces lit the walls. A voice came over the intercom. Not synthetic, not robotic. It was human, male, calm. A voice from before the fall. "Judicator online. Primary user, Abram confirmed. System integrity, 87%. Planet Cracker core offline, awaiting activation." Everyone turned toward me. I stared at the console. I hadn't said a word. Nyera was pale. "You were meant to be part of it," she said. "Not just the rebellion. This. You're not a weapon, Abram. You're a key." I didn't answer. Because if she was right, then I wasn't just fighting to destroy the Federation. I was fighting to become something they feared more than failure. Memory. The problem was the core. The Planet Cracker, the ship's central weapon, was locked behind a second failsafe, powered by a fusion key lost to time. It wasn't on board. The log said it had been extracted during the surrender, hidden somewhere secure. Translation? The Federation took it, and only one place on record had the clearance to store tech of that class, Psylocke's Station. A fortress world orbiting the gas giant Vadrian, 3 jumps away. Federation High Command's deep tech archive. Unbreakable, impenetrable, which meant we had one shot. Take the ship, launch it with partial systems, reach Psylocke's before they realized we'd found Judicator, and steal back the heart they ripped from Earth's chest. We launched the Judicator under a storm of static and fury. Ice peeled from its hull like skin as the engines roared to life for the first time. My crew, small, desperate, half-mad, stood in awe. Some cried, others laughed. But all of us felt it. This wasn't just a ship. It was Earth's memory turned to steel. It responded like a predator, uncaged. I stood on the bridge, hands on controls, older than I was, and gave the order. Engage jump. We tore into the black. The Federation reacted fast. By the time we reached the outskirts of Vadrian's system, Psylocke was already locked down. Defense satellites activated. Interceptors scrambled. They had no idea what we were flying. They thought we were smugglers, raiders, maybe even a rogue pirate fleet. They didn't expect a ghost ship from pre-surrender Earth. We tore through their first wave in under 6 minutes. Judicator's rail cannons shredded their shielding. Plasma lances cooked entire wings of fighters before they got within striking distance. We didn't have the full arsenal, but what we did have was enough to make them panic. And that was the key. Panic meant mistakes. We descended on Psylocke under a cloak of their own static interference. Nara and I led the breach team while Merrick took helm control. The vault was buried beneath kilometers of alloyed stone, behind biometric walls and encryption gates made to withstand planetary invasion. But they weren't made for us. Nara moved like she'd trained for this her whole life, because she had. Her DNA matched the failsafe registry. She touched the core, whispered something in old Earth tongue. The chamber lit up, and the core responded. A sphere of compressed quantum matter, pulsing, alive, encased in an ancient gyroscopic matrix with Earth's flag burned into the casing. Not the new flag, not the one rewritten by the Unity Charter. The real flag. I lifted it in both hands and felt something burn through me. Not heat, not pain. Remembrance. We barely made it back. 2 of our skiffs were shot down in the escape. Merrick was wounded. Half the breach team didn't return. But we had it. We had the core. And when it clicked into Judicator's heart with a thud like thunder, the ship changed. Lights turned gold. The hull retracted plates, revealing weapon systems we hadn't even known were there. The AI's voice deepened. Planet Cracker protocol initialized. Judicator at 100%. Awaiting command. Nyara looked at me across the bridge. This wasn't just power. This was legacy. And now? Now the galaxy would finally understand the cost of betrayal. Judicator wasn't a ship anymore. It was a monument to pain, to rage, to the last gasp of a people no longer willing to be remembered as anything but a warning. When the core locked into place and the systems reached full power, you could feel the weight in the hull. The ship didn't hum. It growled, not through speakers or vibration, in your gut, in your blood, like it wanted to be unleashed. We jumped from the Psylocke system without a scratch. That was the last favor the universe gave us. After that, everything became personal. The Federation High Command issued an immediate Omega-level threat alert. Their highest, not just on us, but on all human populations outside secured sectors. They declared every free human a contagion vector and authorized planetary sterilization. That's what they called it. Sterilization. It wasn't just propaganda anymore. They were planning genocide. We needed a target, not a military outpost, not another logistics hub. We needed something symbolic, something that screamed across every frequency in the galaxy. Earth remembers. Earth has returned. That meant Voron's Spire, the cultural capital of the Unified Federation, a tower of ivory glass stretching 20 kilometers high, orbiting the diplomatic heart of the galaxy. Every treaty was signed there. Every policy that broke Earth's back had passed through its halls. The Spire wasn't a building. It was a cathedral to obedience. We planned to destroy it with a shot from Judicator's forward cannon, not the planet cracker. Not yet. We didn't want ash. We wanted wreckage. Visible, twisted, broadcast in every direction. But something unexpected happened before we could fire. They called us. A transmission came through the primary array, unencrypted. Raw. A woman's face appeared. She looked human. But she wasn't. Her skin shimmered with iridescent patches, markers of genetic fusion with Virelian physiology. I'd seen the procedure before. Federation integration, designed to create compliant crossbreeds with suppressed aggression and artificially reduced memory retention. But this one had her mind intact. "I am High Envoy Liravel," she said calmly. "I was born on Earth, raised under Federation care. I speak to you now not as an enemy, but as one of your own. What you're doing, it's not justice, it's annihilation." I stared at the screen. "You were bred, Lyra," I said, not hiding my disgust. "You don't get to speak for Earth." "I remember it," she said. "I remember the language, the music, the stories my mother whispered before they took her away. I remember the color of the sky." I paused. She leaned forward. "You think I'm a puppet. Maybe I am. But I'm not blind. I've seen what they did to our kind. I've lived it. I wear it. And that's why I'm begging you. Stop before you become the thing they always accused us of being." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I cut the feed. The bridge was silent. Even Nera didn't speak. She just looked at me, eyes dark, studying, measuring. That night I stood alone in the observation chamber, watching the spire spin slowly beneath us like a spiral of glass and guilt. I could feel it, the war pulling at me, changing me. There was no high anymore, no fury, no righteous clarity, just the weight of command. The truth was, I could have fired the planet cracker. I could have cracked that tower from orbit and turned the Federation's symbol into dust so fine it'd poison their soil for centuries. But I didn't. Instead, I sent down a message drone. It landed in the spire's central chamber and projected a single line. "This tower was built on bones. We are the ones who buried them. You have 24 hours to evacuate. Then we come." And for the first time in Federation history, they obeyed. The spire was evacuated within 6 hours. Their diplomats, their senators, their architects of subjugation. They ran. Like rats. That was better than destruction. That was humiliation. So we struck. Judicator's primary cannon fired a single kinetic round the size of a freightliner. It hit at 36,000 kilometers per hour. The impact was seismic. The tower didn't fall. It crumbled, imploding floor by floor, shattering like crystal under a hammer. The light died in waves. The screams echoed for minutes through the open comm channels before static consumed them. And we broadcast every second. That was the moment the rebellion became a movement. Entire slave colonies revolted overnight. Human workforces on 12 planets turned on their masters. Some fought with tools, others with bare hands. But they fought. We gave them permission, not to live, to hate. And that was more powerful than any cannon. But not everyone agreed. Marek came to me that same night. We'd bled together on 4 worlds. He saved my life more times than I could count. But the look in his eyes that night, it wasn't brotherhood. It was doubt. "We're not soldiers anymore," he said. "We're executioners." I stayed quiet. He stepped closer. "They're surrendering, Abram. There are outposts throwing down weapons, asking for negotiation, and we're still burning them down. They watched us rot in chains for centuries." "I know that," he said. "But vengeance isn't a future. It's a fire, and fire eats everything." I looked at him for a long time. "Are you asking me to stop?" I asked. He hesitated. "I'm asking if there's a line you won't cross." I answered him honestly. There was. Once he nodded, and walked out. 3 days later, Marek was gone. Took a Corvette and vanished with 17 others. Left a message. We didn't survive to become the new masters. We survived to break the wheel. But you're building a new one, Abram. We won't be part of it. They didn't turn traitor. They didn't fight us. They just left. And that hurt more than any scar the Federation ever gave me, because it was true. Somewhere along the line, I had stopped fighting for humanity and started fighting as if I was its god. Naira found me in the quiet hours. She said nothing at first, just sat with me in the ship's spine where the walls pulsed like lungs and the AI whispered data streams in ancient Earth code. Then she spoke. "The Judicator isn't just a weapon," she said. "It's a mirror." I turned to her. "You think we've gone too far?" "I think you're asking yourself that," she said, "and that's what keeps you human." She looked tired, old despite her young face. "We were born in cages, Abram," she continued. "But if we start building new ones, no matter how righteous, we're just repeating the story with different actors." I nodded slowly. "Then what do we do?" She smiled, bitter and soft. "We finish what we started, but we don't lose ourselves in the fire." So I made a decision. Our next strike wouldn't be fire, it would be truth. We set course for Station Vale, the deepest archive of the Federation's genetic experiments. That's where they hid the real history of what they did to Earth. The sterilizations, the engineered obedience, the breeding programs, Theta 9. We wouldn't destroy it, we'd expose it, to every species, to every world. We'd make them see. No more pretending. No more lies. They enslaved a species built to survive extinction. And now, extinction was looking back at them. Station Vale wasn't on any public star chart. Tucked behind a dying star in the Calvarus fold, it was cloaked in gravitational shadow, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. And even then, it felt like it didn't want to be found. According to the old logs hidden inside Naira's encoded memories, the station was one of only 3 legacy installations designated as Inquisitory class, a classification reserved for projects too dangerous to be stored within standard archives. This place wasn't just secret, it was shame made solid. And we were going to crack it wide open. Judicator dropped into real space like a god exhaling fury. The moment we breached the fold, automated defense turrets locked on. Not Federation tech. Older. Earth tech. Cold steel batteries designed to vaporize capital ships. If they had fired at full power, even Judicator wouldn't have survived. But they didn't fire. Instead, a signal pulsed from the station. Binary, raw, and chilling. Project Theta 9 status, interface confirmed. Abram Rorden access accepted. The turrets powered down. The station opened like a wound. We docked without resistance. No guards, no voice over the comm. Just a long, sterile hallway lit by dim blue lights and lined with cracked observation glass. As Naira and I stepped off the boarding platform, I felt the hairs on my arms rise. Not from fear, from recognition. I'd never been here, but something inside me remembered. As we walked deeper, we passed rows of empty cells. They weren't for prisoners. They were for experiments. Humans of every generation, every variation, studied like insects under magnification. Each cell had a placard. Each placard bore a classification. TH9-A, Cognitive Divergence Test. TH9-D, Controlled Rage Conditioning. TH9-F, Post-Neural Override Survivors. TH9-R, Instinct Retention Model. They weren't testing humans. They were sculpting us, trying to create a final product, a human capable of total obedience, total predictability, and zero historical memory. And when they couldn't perfect it, they killed the trials. Except for the ones like Naira. Except, possibly, for me. We reached the central archive, a spherical chamber with a suspended control dais, glowing faintly in the center of a swirling pit of data. All around the walls, holograms flickered. Footage, charts, transcripts. Naera activated the core, and the ghosts began to speak. The first file was a video. Grainy, old, pre-surrender Earth. A human scientist, wild-haired and glassy-eyed, sat before a camera. Behind him, human soldiers lay in medical pods, twitching under sedation. "The Federation fears us not because we are violent," he said, "but because our memory cannot be erased. We record pain. We become pain. And pain, when left to rot, becomes resistance. Theta 9 was not meant to make us better servants. It was meant to make us forget who we were. But the deeper we dig, the more we remember. We don't need programming. We need only time." They think they won, but humans never lose. We just wait. Another file played automatically, this one from a Federation security feed. A colony doctor reporting on a TH9 escapee. The subject infected the entire work camp within 36 hours. No violence, no speeches, just eye contact. And then it started. People refusing orders, disabling implants, saying words we hadn't taught them. Old Earth words. It's not a virus. It's a memory contagion. It spreads like fire. We recommend total sterilization. Naera stepped back from the projection, trembling. "They didn't break us," she whispered. "They just delayed us." I nodded slowly. "The rebellion didn't begin with me," I said. "It started the second they tried to erase who we were. And now we had the proof. We downloaded everything. 10 terabytes of classified horror. Blueprints, medical records, footage of public executions ordered to silence early TH9 carriers, testimonies from scientists who begged to shut down the program before they were executed, and even reports of high-ranking Federation officials warning that the project was unethical and likely to provoke species-wide backlash. Their fears had been buried, silenced, buried beneath diplomacy and protocol and smiling lies. We took it all, and we sent it everywhere. That transmission, the full truth of humanity's enslavement, hit the galaxy like a detonation. Federation planets erupted. Neutral species began to riot. Worlds that had once benefited from the trade of human labor now denied any involvement. Others issued apologies. Still more demanded restitution. But for many, it was too little, too late. Human rebels on dozens of worlds stopped waiting for orders. They began executing their overseers, blowing up comm towers, hacking identity registries, and rewriting their records from property to person. And on one planet, Kelric 7, a human slave took control of a terraforming station and reprogrammed the climate systems to choke the alien population under layers of acidic mist. When asked why he did it, he simply said, "I watched my daughter get recycled because she couldn't work a drill. This is me returning the favor." The truth had not set the galaxy free. It had made us furious. But amidst the chaos, something else happened. Something quiet. An invitation. From Lyra Vel, the hybrid diplomat we'd ignored before. She requested a meeting, in person, alone. No weapons, no guards. A neutral moon between sectors. I should have ignored her again. But I didn't. Because something in her eyes, behind the hybrid markings, behind the diplomatic script, felt like fire that had survived. I agreed. The meeting took place on a barren moon, under the shadow of a shattered ring system. Lyra stood at the edge of the landing platform, no escort in sight, a single tablet in her hand. She didn't flinch when I approached. "You broadcast the files," she said. "All of them." I did. They're already calling it the Reckoning Archive. Good. She studied me. You understand what you've started, don't you? This isn't just rebellion now. It's a purge. They're hunting aliens in the streets, species that had nothing to do with the experiments. Colonies are collapsing. Trade systems failing. You've unleashed chaos. They deserve it, I said. Some do, she replied. But not all. I stepped closer. There were no exceptions made for us. Why should they get nuance now? She didn't blink. Because the moment we stop caring about nuance, we become them. I wanted to laugh, wanted to shove her words back down her throat. But I didn't, because behind her eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in too long. Grief, not weakness, not compliance, grief, real human loss. And it shook me. She handed me the tablet. Coordinates, she said, to the Oblivion Vault. The last living members of the TH9 original design team are there, kept alive by the Federation for decades. They know more than I ever could. Why help me? I asked. Because this war is going to end one of two ways, she said. You'll win, and the galaxy will never forget the cost. Or you'll lose, and they'll bury the truth again. She looked down. I don't care who's left standing, but the truth has to survive. Or it'll all happen again, to someone else. She turned and walked away, into the darkness. We left the moon in silence. The crew didn't ask what the meeting was about. They saw it in my eyes. The war was moving toward its final chapter, and somewhere in the stars, the architects of our pain still breathed. That would not stand. The Oblivion Vault didn't orbit any star. It floated in a hollow region between collapsed systems, an ancient construct sealed in gravitational lock, protected by fields so dense even sensor ghosts passed it over like dead space. The Federation hadn't built it. We had. Earth, in its last breath before surrender, carved the vault to bury what no one should ever find again. But the Federation found it anyway, and they'd kept it alive. For 87 years, according to the logs in Liravel's tablet, the Federation maintained the vault using repurposed caretakers and neural data feeders. No guards, no flags, just sterile silence, like they were too afraid to destroy it, too afraid to face what was inside. I didn't bring a fleet, just Judicator. She descended without noise, slipping past the perimeter like a ghost returning to the house where it died. Inside the vault, there were no lights, only pulse beacons, and rows of cryocapsules, 47, arranged in a circle like a council of frozen gods, each pod holding a scientist, a strategist, a bioengineer, every one of them listed in the Theta 9 files, the designers of the human collapse. Naira walked beside me. Her face was stone. I didn't have to ask if she was ready. She'd been waiting her whole life for this. We reactivated the life support systems manually. No AI, no remote overrides. Everything here had been hardwired to prevent outside control. The first capsule opened with a slow hiss, spilling vapor and memory into the room. The man inside twitched. His skin was gray with age, but his eyes fluttered like a child waking from a nightmare. He sat up slowly, looked at me, and whispered, "Subject TH9 Prime." I didn't speak, not yet. We revived 4 more. They coughed, gasped, blinked into the lights like cave fish dragged from the depths. They knew who we were, and they didn't beg. That surprised me. One of them, a woman with half her skull replaced by a dermal processor, stood upright the moment her restraints were released. "You survived," she said. I stepped forward. "You made sure we wouldn't." She nodded. "We made sure some of you wouldn't. You were always the risk. You, the ones who remembered." "Remembered what?" Naira growled. The woman looked at her slowly. "Your beginning." She walked to the console at the chamber's core. Her fingers were stiff, but they still danced across the interface like it was home. The walls lit with projections, ancient maps, DNA helixes, charts of language, memory, emotion, warfare. And then, Earth. From orbit. 2117. The woman turned to us. We didn't enslave humanity because we feared its violence. That's what they told the Federation, what we told them. But the truth is worse. She changed the projection. Now it showed Earth's history, flashes of every war, every betrayal, every uprising, a timeline soaked in blood. You weren't dangerous because you fought. Every species fights. She tapped a point in the projection. A simple phrase, logged from an early TH9 subject during sedation. I don't forget. That's what made you different, she whispered. That phrase, spoken again and again, even under sedation. You don't forget. She turned to me. Pain becomes code in your species. It embeds, it rewrites. You take trauma and turn it into culture, into legacy, into story. Other species let pain die. You pass it down like scripture. She pointed at me. You are not the apex predator of your kind. You're the memory of pain given voice. That's why Earth burned, because your trauma didn't just survive, it evolved. I felt Nyera's breath catch beside me, but the woman wasn't done. We thought we could fix it, break the cycle, remove the traits that turned history into a weapon. But the more we tried, the more resistance you produced. She gestured at Nyera. She is proof, a girl raised in a tube. No culture, no books, no parents. But when she saw what you were, she remembered. Not intellectually, biologically. Memory lives in your marrow. Your kind turns suffering into signal. She turned to me again. You're the signal. I stepped forward. I'm not your signal anymore. Her voice softened. Number now, you're something else. She tapped the final control. A final file appeared, redacted, sealed under Earth High Command clearance. I opened it. What I saw made my throat tighten. It was a video, a message. From me. Or from the man I was based on. A genetic original. Real name, Abram Soren. A soldier, rebel, Earth loyalist. One of the last voices before Earth surrendered. He stared into the screen with blood on his face and fury in his voice. If you're seeing this, you're what they made of me. A copy, a weapon, a warning. You were never supposed to be born, but if you are, then the experiment failed. And that means one thing. You are free. Don't just survive. Don't just burn it all down. Decide what comes after, because they'll expect another tyrant. Be more than memory. The file ended. I didn't speak for a long time. Nyera was silent too. The woman watched us both. You can kill us, she said. You have that right. No one would blame you. Nyera raised her weapon, but I put my hand on it. She looked at me, eyes flickering with anger, confusion. Not like this, I said quietly. We don't end it in another tomb. Nyera's eyes shimmered. She lowered the gun. We didn't kill the scientists. We didn't torch the vault. Instead, we sealed them again, this time under our protocols. The data was copied, the evidence released. Every species would now see the full depth of what was done to Earth. But vengeance wasn't the goal anymore. Legacy was. We returned to Judicator, and I gave one final transmission to every world, every colony, every rebel cell, to every enslaved or broken person still waiting for someone to tell them they mattered. I spoke not as Abram the weapon, not as TH9, just as a man. The war is over. We do not ask for forgiveness. We do not beg for peace. But we will not burn this galaxy just because we were forged in fire. You called us slaves, dogs, brutes, monsters. Now you will call us survivors. We remember everything. And we choose to rebuild. Some didn't agree. Some rebel cells broke off. Still hungry, still burning, still bitter. But most? They listened. Because someone had to say it. Someone had to draw a line between justice and annihilation. And this time, humanity drew it themselves. Years passed. The Federation collapsed. A new order took shape, slow, flawed, fractured. But it wasn't built on chains. It was built on remembrance. Nyera became a voice in the new council, equal parts fire and steel. Marek returned from the outer systems, his group now protectors of colonists rebuilding in dead sectors. Judicator remained in orbit above old Earth, a monument, not a weapon. And me? I walked the surface of my home for the first time. No collar, no code, just footsteps, in soil that remembered.